The Night King was one of the most mysterious and terrifying figures in Game of Thrones. From the very first episode, we knew something dark was coming from beyond the wall. The show gave us kings, queens, wars, and betrayals, but the Night King was different. He wasn't fighting for a throne or a crown. He wanted to end all life. Every time he appeared on screen, the air seemed to grow colder. His blue eyes, his silent stare, and the army of the dead behind him made him feel like an unstoppable force. Fans waited year after year to see the final war between the living and the dead, the ultimate battle for survival. And that is why his ending was one of the biggest mistakes Game of Thrones made. After 8 seasons of building up the Night King as the greatest threat to Westeros, the show defeated him in just one night. The mystery surrounding him was never fully explained. His motives were never revealed. His connection to Bran was barely touched on. He was gone in one shocking moment, leaving fans with more questions than answers. What made the Night King so special was the fear he created. For so much of the show, the humans of Westeros were busy fighting each other. The Starks fought the Lannisters, the Baratheons fought for power, Daenerys was conquering cities across the Narrow Sea, and everyone wanted the Iron Throne. But beyond the wall, the Night King was building an army of the dead. Every time someone died, he had the power to turn them into a white and add them to his ranks. He could take the smallest battle and turn it into a disaster simply by raising those who fell. He also represented something more than just death. He was a reminder that all the power struggles of men meant nothing in the face of extinction. It didn't matter who sat on the throne if everyone was dead. This made him the perfect villain, a shadow over the entire story, forcing the characters and the viewers to remember that a much bigger war was coming. For years, Game of Thrones teased this bigger war. We saw White Walkers appearing here and there, always just out of reach. We saw villages destroyed, rangers killed, and the army of the dead slowly moving south. The tension was perfect. When the Night King finally attacked Hardhome in Season 5, it was one of the most chilling moments in the entire show. The way he silently raised his hands and brought every dead body back to life was unforgettable. It was the moment fans realized this wasn't just a distant threat. The dead were coming, and nothing could stop them. This slow build-up made fans believe that the Night King's final attack would be the centerpiece of the show's ending. Many imagined a whole season focused on the Long Night, the struggle between life and death, with one kingdom falling after another as the dead marched south. They expected the characters to fight desperate battles, to lose people they loved, and to slowly uncover the truth about who the Night King was and why he wanted to destroy everything. But when the end came, it was over in a single battle at Winterfell. The Battle of Winterfell was big, dark, and chaotic, but it lasted just one night. And in the end, Arya Stark killed the Night King with a single strike of her dagger. It was a powerful, surprising moment, but it also felt too easy. The greatest villain in the show, the one we had been afraid of for 8 years, was gone in seconds. The problem was not that Arya killed him. Her victory was thrilling, but that the show didn't give us enough time to understand what it meant. The Night King never spoke a word, never explained his reasons, and never shared his story. Was he just evil for the sake of being evil? Did he hate the children of the forest who created him? Did he want revenge on the First Men? Was his plan to destroy all of Westeros personal? Or was he simply following some dark design? The show never told us. Then there was his connection to Bran Stark. We were told Bran was the three-eyed raven, the keeper of all memories, and that the Night King wanted to kill him because he represented the world's history. This was interesting, but it was never fully explored. Why did the Night King care about history? Was Bran somehow his opposite, light to his darkness, life to his death? If so, why didn't we see a true confrontation between them? Instead, Bran sat in his wheelchair, waiting quietly, and Arya delivered the killing blow. This is why fans felt so frustrated. The Night King was set up as the ultimate villain, but we never got to learn who he truly was. We never got to see his plan unfold in full. Even the long night, which was supposed to last for a generation according to the legends, lasted only a few hours of screen time. It felt like the show took its scariest, most powerful storyline and ended it too quickly, just so it could move back to the fight for the Iron Throne. The loss of the Night King so early in the final season also changed the tone of the story. Once he was gone, all the focus went back to the politics of King's Landing. But after watching the end of the world almost arrive, the Game of Thrones felt smaller, less important. Fans had been prepared for a fight for survival, not just another battle for power. The story felt like it had peaked too early. It's worth imagining how different the ending could have been if the Night King had stayed around longer. What if the dead had won at Winterfell and the survivors had to retreat south, joining forces with Cersei despite hating her? What if we got to see the Night King march through every major castle, wiping out armies and raising more whites until the entire realm was one big battlefield? What if Bran used his powers to step into the Night King's mind and uncover his past, showing us why he became what he was? These are the kinds of moments that fans dreamed about, but they never came. Even so, the Night King remains one of the most iconic villains in television history. His design, his silence, his blue-eyed stare, all of it made him unforgettable. The image of him raising the dead at Hardhome or calmly walking through fire without flinching will stay with fans forever. That is why his ending felt like such a missed opportunity. The show had built him into a legend, but it never gave us the full story behind the legend. The fall of the Night King was one of the most shocking moments in Game of Thrones, but it also felt too fast and too final for a character who had been built up as the ultimate villain for almost a decade. We spent years watching the White Walkers slowly move closer to Westeros, taking one kingdom after another, and turning thousands into whites. Every scene that showed them made them feel like an unstoppable force of nature. The Night King himself never spoke, never showed fear, and never gave us a clue about what he wanted. This silence made him terrifying. It made him feel like something beyond human, something that couldn't be reasoned with. So when he was suddenly gone in just one battle, it left fans stunned, and not in the good way. The story of the Night King felt unfinished, like there were missing pieces we never got to see. It wasn't just that he died, but how he died. Arya Stark's attack was surprising, yes, but it also felt like it came out of nowhere. For years, Jon Snow had been the character most closely connected to the Night King. He saw him at Hardhome, he faced him beyond the wall, and he warned everyone that this was the real war they had to fight. The show made it seem like Jon and the Night King were destined to face each other. We even saw them lock eyes several times, almost daring each other to make the final move. But when the big moment came, Jon was far away, trapped fighting a dragon and screaming in frustration. He didn't even see Arya's final strike. That meant Jon's entire journey, everything he sacrificed, never led to the showdown fans had been waiting for. This decision made the Night King's defeat feel more like a quick twist than the climax of a long, epic story. We never learned his motives. Was he just trying to destroy humanity? Was he after Bran because he was the three-eyed raven, or was there more to their connection? The show hinted at a history between them but never explained it. Even the Children of the Forest creating the first White Walker was only briefly shown. There were no follow-up scenes to explain what that meant. These unanswered questions left viewers with the feeling that the Night King was just an obstacle to be removed rather than a character with a real story. The battle itself also made it seem like he wasn't as dangerous as we had been led to believe. For years, we were told that this was an enemy that could wipe out the entire world. But when the fight happened, the Night King walked through fire, smiled, and kept going. He raised the dead with one motion of his hand. All of this built the tension perfectly, and then, within seconds, he was gone. His army collapsed. The war was over. The biggest threat in the story was removed in a single night. This made the rest of the season feel like a completely different show. Instead of the story being about survival against the undead, it became a political battle for the Iron Throne. The sudden shift was too much for many viewers, who had been waiting years to see the true war come to an end in a way that felt earned. Many fans felt that the Night King should have had at least one more major appearance before his death. Maybe he could have survived the Battle of Winterfell and moved on to attack King's Landing, forcing the living to work together longer. Maybe we could have had an entire season focused just on the war against the dead. This would have given the Night King more time to be explored as a character and would have made his defeat feel like a true victory instead of a sudden twist. By ending his story so quickly, the show lost a lot of the tension that had been built over 8 seasons. Another missed opportunity was showing how the Night King's defeat affected the world. We saw the army of the dead fall apart, but there was no moment where the characters truly reflected on what had just happened. There was no sense of global relief, no big scene showing how close they came to losing everything. In a story that had been telling us for years that this was the most important threat to humanity, the victory felt strangely quiet. The very next episode shifted back to court politics and who would sit on the Iron Throne. It made the entire war against the dead feel like just another side quest instead of the main event. The Night King could have been one of the greatest villains in TV history, but the writing didn't give him the ending he deserved. Even though he never spoke a word, his presence was enough to scare everyone who watched the show. He represented death itself, an unstoppable force that reminded us that power struggles and politics mean nothing if everyone is dead. By removing him so quickly, the story lost that sense of urgency. Suddenly, we were back to watching who betrayed who wanted the throne, and who would be crowned at the end. The problem was that after facing the Night King, those things no longer felt as important. The stakes had been raised too high, and then they dropped too suddenly. Some viewers argue that this was the point, that Game of Thrones was never about good versus evil but about the messy, human fight for power. But even if that is true, it doesn't change the fact that the Night King was the most mysterious and terrifying character in the story, and we barely learned anything about him before he was gone. There was no backstory, no origin episode, no conversation that revealed what drove him. That might have worked if his defeat had been stretched out or felt more climactic, but it didn't. Instead, we got a quick resolution that left many people unsatisfied. In the end, the mistake wasn't just killing the Night King. The mistake was building him up as the ultimate villain for years and then ending his story without giving him the depth or the time he deserved. His death should have felt like the final battle of the series, not something that happened with 3 episodes left. It should have given us answers and left us feeling like this was the end of an era. Instead, it left us with questions and a sudden shift in tone that made the final episodes feel rushed. The Night King story is a reminder of how important pacing and payoff are in a long-running series. Viewers had invested almost a decade waiting to see how this threat would end, and when it finally happened, it felt like it was over too soon. The mystery of the Night King could have been one of the most compelling parts of Game of Thrones. Instead, it became one of its biggest disappointments. And that's why the Night King's ending will always feel like Game of Thrones' biggest mistake. Years of build-up, endless tension, and a villain like no other, all gone in one night. He deserved more, and so did we. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, did the Night King get the ending he deserved?